Mitch Gerber alongside Wendell Barnhouse at Big 12 Media Days, wrapping things up. It's been kind of a hectic couple of days, but a lot's been talked about, lots been accomplished here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. But Wendell, a lot has been talked about the last couple of days. What's your biggest takeaway of these past 2 days?
Well, you know, the favorites, TCU and Baylor, but one of the guys that got a lot of attention when we had the breakouts in the afternoon, the one player that had the most media people around him was on Monday. That was Trayvon Boykin of TCU, who I thought handled everything very smoothly, very calmly, was very humble for a guy that is going to be a Heisman candidate, and was asked a lot of questions about the Baylor game, which isn't going to be until almost the end of the year. He handled everything very well. He seemed very poised. I think that this guy, for somebody that just has suddenly come into the spotlight as a national player, really handled everything well. Really spoke well for TCU as far as a guy who is going to be their leader on offense. He just handled everything very well, I thought.
Well, one of the biggest messages the last couple of days, too, throughout this entire thing was no team's really out of it from the top to bottom. Obviously, there's the favorites in TCU and Baylor, but all the players kind of got together with that same kind of phrase and said no one's out of it from the top to bottom. Why was that?
Well, you know, I do think there's a lot of balance in the Big 12. You know, everybody, you know, Baylor and TCU were the only two teams that got first-place votes. But I think those two schools are both going to have tough times, particularly in November. They've got tough November schedules. They both have to play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State on the road. In fact, before TCU is at home against Baylor, they have Oklahoma on the road 6 days before that game. So I think the teams in Oklahoma, State are both going to have something to say about who might end up winning it. And we're not even talking about a team like Texas, who is obviously in a rebuilding aspect, but I think they're a team with enough talent that they could maybe pull an upset. They play Baylor the last game of the season, so if Baylor would happen to maybe beat TCU and be flying pretty high, they're going to have to turn around and play a team like Texas. And West Virginia, I've mentioned in a lot of interviews I've done, I'm riding their horse until it throws me off, because I think West Virginia is a real dark horse team with a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and I think they could cause a lot of trouble for any team that's got to go play in Morgantown this year. Had better be ready.
Well, there's a lot of players that were at this media days the last couple of days. A lot of impressive ones, a lot of well-spoken, humbled ones. Who did you like the most?
Well, Boykin really stood out to me. A couple of coaches I'd like to mention. David Beatty, the guy at Kansas. You know, you mentioned that almost every team's in it. Kansas is really going to have a tough season. But for a guy who was first-time head coach, he came in, and the first few minutes of his 20 minutes in front of the media, he seemed a little nervous, but then he really got into it. I think he had some guys in the media ready to pad up and go play. He really kind of got some people psyched up. And today, the second day of Media Day, Charlie Strong in Texas seemed extremely relaxed. Last year, he seemed pretty uptight about things. Today, he seemed very relaxed, very at ease. I think he understands that, look, I'm going to get this done at Texas. It may take a few years, but he seemed very relaxed, particularly compared to last season.
I was a big fan of Sean Oakman the last couple of days, especially today. Here's a big guy that Baylor, obviously a team that's a favorite. Look out, fans, because he was one of those guys that said there's no fear in this team defensively and offensively, so look out for them. But that's going to wrap things up here from Big 12 Media Days in Dallas, Texas. For Wendell Barnhouse, I'm Mitch Gerber. Thanks so much for tuning in on the Big 12 Digital Network.